The FIFA 2022 World Cup was special. It certainly lived up to its name about being the best sports competition in the world. But one of the main reasons that it's held in such high regard is the gap between each edition of the trophy. Everyone knows by this stage that the World Cup is held once every 4 years. And I sure do hope that it remains the same. Shit. Regardless of this, it doesn't change the fact that our favourite stars only get a handful of chances to even participate in the competition, let alone winning it. And this World Cup was no different. In fact, I think the 2022 edition of the World Cup was more special in the sense that we are entering the final phase of an entire generation of football players. Players that I grew up watching are slowly fading away into football folklore. Welcome back to AR Football. If you find this video interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe. I'll be uploading every week with topics related to football. The 2010s was a wonderful decade for the sport we all love. We saw Man City transition from the second best team in Manchester to dominating the Premier League, similar to Sir Alex Ferguson's United sides. Liverpool managed to win their first Premier League title ever, and meanwhile, United had a bunch of firsts they wish they'd never had. Juventus and Bayern Munich soloed their respective leagues, and Barcelona almost did the same with La Liga. All of this happened while Real Madrid managed to win 4 Champions League titles in 5 years, just one off repeating their own historic feat in the 1950s. But the players who masterminded this era for their respective teams have been replaced by younger and fresher talent. Bayern's iconic Batman and Robin duo, ironically called Robbery, were replaced by Coman, Gnabry and Sané. Both Ribéry and Robin have called it quits and have retired while playing their final games for Salernitana FC and FC Groningen, respectively. Yeah, I know I butchered those names. Another name on the list, Sergio Aguero, had a very unfortunate and heartbreaking end to his career due to his medical condition and only managed to score once for Barcelona before hanging up his boots. Yeah, I take that back. Along with this, we also said farewell to one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time in Iker Casillas, who managed to play 5 more years at FC Porto after leaving Real Madrid. Similar to these greats, ever since the last World Cup in 2018, hundreds of players have retired from football. And of these players, this graphic here shows the retired players who had their names sung throughout different parts of the world for various reasons. Yes, some for reasons other than football. But let's take a moment to analyze this graphic. Most of these retirements were expected, while some of these retirements had me thinking, wait, you're actually still playing? Now, these are all just the notable names. It gets smaller once you just focus on the players who were at one time one of the best in the world at what they did. The thing that stood out the most for me in this graphic was that a larger number of the greats retired just a season after the 2018 World Cup, compared to before the start of the 2022 World Cup. It's safe to say that most great players decide when they're going to retire based off their ability to compete in the World Cup. Now, some of these players on the list were not making it regardless of the situation, but watching these youngsters compete at that level that these legends cannot compete at anymore certainly had a part to play in their retirements. And this leads us on to the aftermath of the 2022 World Cup. We may have just witnessed the final World Cup games of some of the greatest players to ever play in this generation. And I say may because some of these players were never meant to be this good at this stage of their careers. So who knows what's going to happen? There are a few players who have arrived at the end of the road though. Sergio Ramos and Gerard Piqué were fundamental in the success of the golden generation of Spanish football. But this time around, they didn't even make the team. Now, Ramos not making the team probably has something to do with Luis Enrique's history with Barcelona. But Gerard Piqué just flat out retired in one of the most unexpected fashions. And it was this retirement that even gave me the idea of making this video. I made a graphic of the players that we probably won't see in the World Cup ever again. The deadly duo from Uruguay, Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani, will no longer torment opposition players with their traditional 4-4-2 formation, which has been long forgotten by modern football. Manuel Neuer, the second wall of the German defense after Oliver Kahn, will no longer cause heart attacks to millions of opposing fans with his otherworldly saves. The golden generation of Belgium started and ended with the meteoric rise and fall of Eden Hazard. Robert Lewandowski, the only striker to have ever surpassed the records set by the great Gerd Müller. Dani Alves, the man with the highest number of trophies in football history and arguably the greatest right back of all time. Karim Benzema, the perfect example of patience and mental strength needed to bounce back from the scrutiny he has faced throughout his career to finally winning the People's Ballon d'Or. Luka Modric, the only player who can comfortably sit on the same table as Zidane and Iniesta when it comes to the greatest midfielders of all time. I could make a video on each of these players themselves, and it's because they've left an everlasting impact on football history. But none of them will ever come close to the legacy left behind by the two greatest players of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. It doesn't matter what order you have them in. One thing that's certain is that they are levels above anyone else to have ever played the game in the modern era. From happiness to dejection, ecstasy to despair, and euphoria to depression. Fans who followed the career of these two greats have dealt with it all, and no matter what happens going forward, it's not going to change their opinion on where they have them in their rankings. But it's finally coming to a close, and I am the last person on this planet who wants them to retire, but it's inevitable. Father Time is undefeated. So instead of being sad over one generation of football coming to an end, let's rejoice and celebrate the next generation of football stars. The 2022 edition of the World Cup witnessed the debuts of many Wonderkids on the biggest stage of the competition. Aurélien Tchouameni made France feel like Pogba and Kante were still there on the pitch, while Jude Bellingham was fantastic for England, and he set a high price tag on himself for the upcoming transfer window. Enzo Fernandez won the Best Young Player of the Tournament award, and his teammate Julian Alvarez now has a solid reason to convince Pep Guardiola to play with two strikers at Manchester City. Pedri and Gavi reminded a lot of people of a young Xavi and Iniesta. And finally, not the youngest out of all of them, but the best, Kylian Mbappe has finally arrived. And by that, I mean that he has finally set himself up for a Ballon d'Or top 3 finish. He has set a case for himself as the best player on the planet by dragging the French B team to the final and scoring the first hat-trick in a final since 1966. Absolutely unreal player. It's time to follow the careers of these players with the same passion that we had for the greats of the soon-to-be past. A special mention to Lionel Messi. He has completed football, and even though I am a fan of Cristiano Ronaldo, I know how to appreciate greatness when I see it. With that, this video comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment down below on which player you are most sad to see go. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the legacy that Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi have had with their national teams. So subscribe and turn on post notification to know when that video is out. Until next time.